Please welcome the Master of Ceremonies for this afternoon, Chairman for the Skoll Centre for Social Entrepreneurship and MBA Director of the Saïd Business School, University of Oxford, Stephan Chambers.
Who heard Feliciano dos Santos this afternoon? That's worth the first round of applause of the day. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. So, the sun shone mostly, the conversation sparkled, and the invisible hand had a visible heart. Shelley called poets the unacknowledged legislators of the world. And you were poets this week. I've been asked about a dozen times this week what's changed over the last 11 years of our forum. And I think what's changed is that there's a certainty and a confidence that what is central to our world is central to the world. There's a certainty that what you do transcends Oxford and this magical week we share. We are truly more ambitious. And we're also humbler. We know that injustice runs deep, that the human equilibrium is fragile, and that the work doesn't end. No one could mistake your ambition for arrogance. That's an amazing achievement. Thank you. Anyone who had goosebumps yesterday at the awards ceremony, put up a hand. Anyone who cried this week, put up a hand. By the way, you can put up two hands, because they're not... Anyone who learnt something extraordinary this week, put up a hand. Anyone who made a connection this week, put up a hand. Anyone who felt they weren't working alone this week, put up a hand. That looks from where I'm standing to be about 100% of you. And that is what C.O.N is now officially calling the Skoll effect. It's measurable from space. It's measurable at the subatomic level. And it's measurable in your energy, presence, and goodwill. Thank you. What the Skoll effect measures is the coefficient of ambition and humility, love and generosity, education and peace, justice and passion. You are the Skoll effect. We talked this week about many bad things: slavery, child marriage, environmental degradation, climate change, corruption, overweening surveillance, political impasse, poverty, disease, illiteracy, corruption. And amazingly, at every point, there were heroes amongst you who made these threats opportunities. You have made it your life's work to oppose those injustices. That's ambition, and that's the Skoll effect. Thank you. And this afternoon, we will hear examples of ambition in service of this effect. Will Marshall is an Oxonian. He runs Planet Labs. Planet Labs has a very cool name. And they do very cool things. And I'm allowed to say cool since I'm living in Northern California. As does Will. When I get back to Oxford, I'll have to call cool things interesting. Or astonishing, or extraordinary, or even brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, in actual size, Will Marshall.
Thank you, everyone. So over the last few days, I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you, and it's really been inspiring. Everyone here is working on some of the toughest challenges around the entire planet. And one of the things I've recognized about that is that there's a couple of commonalities. Everyone seems to be working in situations that are some of the most infrastructure-starved and data-starved situations around the world. And I'm here to tell you about a tool which, like many of your works, it knows no borders, and which, although is no silver bullet, may, we think, empower many of your efforts as social innovators around this planet to get your work done. So this is the Earth, and the Earth doesn't really need much of an introduction. It doesn't need much of an introduction in part because the Apollo 17 astronauts, when they were hurtling around the moon in 1972, took this iconic image. And it inspired an entire generation of human beings to realize that we are on spaceship Earth, fragile and finite as it is, and that we need to take care of it. But beautiful as this image is, it's static, and the world is constantly changing. In particular, it's changing on human timescales of days and weeks with human action. And if we want to take care of it, we need imagery of the planet on a really regular basis. And today, the imagery of our planet is old. In fact, if you go online and see the satellite imagery there, it's typically many years old. So we posit that if we could take images of the whole planet every day, we'd be able to take care of our spaceship Earth. And so what's standing in our way? Why don't we have images of the whole planet every day today? Well, this is what's standing in our way. Satellites are big, they're expensive, and they're slow. So me and a team of friends got together to try and tackle this problem, to make small and compact satellites that we could launch at scale. And I'm going to show you what our satellite looks like. This is our satellite. This, I might hesitate to add, is not a scale model. It's the real size. It's 10 by 10 by 30 centimeters. It weighs 4 kilograms. And we've stuffed the latest and greatest electronics and sensor systems into this little package, such that even though it's 1,000th of the mass of the satellite you see behind me, it can take, in many ways, it's more powerful. It can take images on the ground 10 times the resolution of the one in there. And we call this satellite Dove. We call it Dove because many satellites are named after birds, but typically birds of prey. Sort of like eagle, hawk, swoop, kill this, kestrel eye to spy this, or what have you. But our satellites have a humanitarian mission, and so we call them Doves. But we haven't just built them, we've launched them into space. And not just one, but many. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. We started, actually, in our garage. Now, this is where we built our first prototype just 2 years ago. And as a Silicon Valley company, it's pretty par for the course to build your first prototype in the garage. But I can tell you as a space company, this is definitely not usual. And that's not the only lesson we learned from Silicon Valley. We do early release software. We take the latest technology and stuff it into this little satellite. And we test them in space on a rapid basis. We've learned how to manufacture them at scale using modern manufacturing techniques. We call it agile aerospace. And what bonds our team is how do we democratize access to satellites and satellite data? In fact, the founders of our company, Chris, Robbie, and I, we met at a UN conference 15 years ago that was dedicated to specifically that question. How can satellites be used to help people? How can they be used to help people in developing countries or with climate change? And we spent the last 15 years thinking about that. We actually first took our efforts doing science teaching in sub-Saharan Africa because we thought that would help relieve people out of poverty. But we actually found that was more tricky than we thought, and that building satellites would be easier. So we actually spent many years at NASA building many sorts of satellites, and then we left a couple of years ago to build satellites for humanitarian purposes and commercial purposes. And that's when we formed Planet Labs. So I'm going to show you this video of 2 of our satellites being launched from the International Space Station just 8 weeks ago. There you see 2 of them, and you can see the size of our satellites compared with the space station. It's like some of the smallest satellites ever being launched from the most gigantic satellite ever. At the very end, the panels clip in the sun. Look, that's cool. Well, you see, us space geeks don't normally see our satellites in space. The last time we see them is when we bolt them to the side of the launch vehicle. So it's really cool to actually get them, to see them in space. And this was taken by an astronaut inside the space station as a video. So that was the first 2 of 28 that we launched like that. It's the largest constellation of Earth imaging satellites ever launched. This is what they look like just before we sent them up in their nest, as we call it, the doves in their nest. All these 28 are now in orbit and operating. But that's just the beginning for us. We just sent another 28 to the launch site. Over the course of this next year, we'll be launching more than 100 satellites. It's the largest constellation of satellites in human history, all built in our little lab in downtown San Francisco. And this is what they're going to be doing. I'm going to show you a video. They basically act in a single orbit plane. All of the satellites are pointed down, taking images. And the Earth slowly rotates underneath. As it rotates underneath, they slowly scan across. Since the Earth takes 24 hours to rotate, they take a picture of every spot on the ground every 24 hours. We call it a line scanner for the planet. We are taking a picture of every single spot on the ground every day. I want to emphasize that. It's quite a radical new data set that humanity has never before had. And although these satellites were launched just a few weeks ago, we've already started taking some images with them, and I'm just going to share some of the very first images with you today. This is the very first image we got down. The satellite happened to be over the UC Davis campus in California when we took this image. No, there's just luck. The image was really beautiful, but when we showed it side by side with the most recent other image, we saw several buildings have been built. The general point is that we'll be able to see urban change as it happens around the world every single day, in every town and village. This was taken just yesterday in Bolivia, and I was just perusing some of the images we took down, and we detected this fire, and that's pretty cool. We'll be able to detect fires, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, and help people with their relief operations around the world. This image is of a reservoir. We'll be able to tell the water levels in every water body around the planet every day. Imagine what that can do for water security. From water security to food security, we can also tell crop yield in every field. We can tell basically the crop growth and by ratioing certain spectral bands. And that's really cool because we can help farmers to improve their agricultural yield around the planet. If I take a step back for a moment, really, we realize that there are hundreds of applications. I barely touched on the surface with these examples. One of the first ones we thought about was deforestation. We'd be able to track every tree on the planet every day and monitor illegal logging. The difference between today's image and yesterday's image is much of the world's news. We'd be able to find a plane or detect floods. No, that's exactly right, yeah. That should not be a problem again. And so there are hundreds of applications, and we believe the best thing we can do to ensure that all of them are enabled is to democratize access to this data. And so we're going to ensure that that happens. And And amongst these applications, there are both commercial and humanitarian ones. And we're really lucky with that because the commercial ones are pretty big too. And so, in essence, the commercial case can fund the satellite system so that the humanitarian cases don't have to support that. Thank you. So why am I here? Well, I'm here to tell you that this data set is coming. And as a prelude, if you like, it's early days for us, but we hope that this data set will help social innovators around the world. And we want you to start thinking about how it might be useful for you, how it might help you to achieve your mission. I'm here, secondly, to announce that we're launching Planet.org, a humanitarian part of our enterprise, to ensure that the humanitarian potential of our data is used. And I'm here to tell you about the first program of that, which we call the Mission 1 Alliance. Essentially, just getting the images from space is not enough. There's a gap between having pretty pictures and useful information for social innovators around the world. And so whilst there's some NGOs out there that maybe have GIS experts who can use this data, there's many that do not. And we want to help them to bridge that gap. So what the Mission 1 Alliance is about bringing together partners, so helping NGOs that don't have that GIS expertise to have that GIS expertise, along with funding agencies and us investing with our data to help tackle problems. I would like to encourage anyone that thinks that this data will be interesting to them, whether through this program or any others that we will think about doing over the course of this year, to register your interest on Planet.org, to tell us about your problems and how we can help. And I want to leave you by bringing us back to our beautiful spaceship Earth. We're going to be taking an image of every spot on this Earth every single day, and we're going to be democratizing access to that data, and we hope that social innovators will make use of that data to help their causes. And so I'll just leave you with the following question. If you had access to imagery of the whole Earth every single day, what would you do with it? How would it help your mission, or what new challenges would you solve? Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Will. Will is a dove, not a hawk, though he weighs a little bit more than 4 kilograms. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to someone who knows a very great deal about the world's greatest growth region, someone who wrestles daily with complex opportunity in 54 countries. And I will introduce you to someone who is skilled in asking questions, getting answers, and doing so without appearing to. Ladies and gentlemen, we're privileged to hear from one of Africa's leading investors and philanthropists, Tony Elumelu, and from Francine Lacqua, who will host a conversation. Welcome, Francine. Welcome, Tony. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. It's good to be here with you all, to see the faces of people who are going to change the world. I'd like to start by congratulating my friend, Jeff, and Sally for doing such an amazing job. They are wise people, wise man and woman. They recognize the power of the people in this room, the people to whom the future of the world belongs, and people who have a key role, as Jeff and I believe, to play in shaping the world and helping to meet most of mankind's needs. I was invited to share some thoughts or as inspiration to you or with you. And I reflected when I got the invitation what I could be saying to people who already have become entrepreneurs and aspiring to become more successful. But I felt that the best way is to share a little of my own personal experience. They say experience is the best teacher. So I'd like to share a brief experience how we started a journey, as I believe some of you have started or are in the process of starting. And this was I was 30 then, and I'm told the average age of people in this hall, 25. So you are even starting much earlier than I did. But I was originally a banker. I operated as a banker at a time the industry was expanding. At a time we had, in my country, Nigeria, over 100 banks. And I felt that there would come a time that the banks, or some of the banks, could become challenged. And there was a need to position ourselves to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that will unfold. And this came to pass. And when it happened, we were ready. We took advantage by investing and turning around at least one of the banks. We grew that bank from a near distressed floundering bank to become one of the five top banks in the country under a period of 10 years. And subsequently, we merged this bank with the third largest bank in the country, and we created the biggest bank in the country, with branches then of about 420. And from that bank, we grew that bank into a Pan-African bank that today has presence in 19 African countries, presence in the UK, presence in Paris, and presence in New York. We did this because of some, shall I say, attributes or factors I'd like to share with you. First is the power of foresight. You need to be able to see beyond today, because it is in trying to see beyond today that you create a unique business opportunity, an advantage. And if you're able, beyond seeing, to now actualize it by working hard, then it makes it a lot easier again. So first message by way of inspiration is that as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, we need to have the ability to see beyond today. We need to understand our environment and see what could be the future of the environment. Understanding that, being able to say this could happen, if you get it right, you would have created huge opportunities. But the second thing is purpose. So you dream without purpose, or a journey without purpose to a large extent is a waste of time. So you have a purpose beyond the foresight to say, okay, this is what we would do. So we saw that there would be opportunity in the banking industry at the time, and we said, when this opportunity, what would be the opportunity itself? There could be crisis, and the industry will need solution. And so let's groom and prepare ourselves to be the solution provider for the industry, hence the turnaround. So purpose, very important, to you. And the third thing is hard work. You can't have the foresight, the purpose, if you're not able to match that with hard work. It just would die like that. So we worked very hard. And again, as entrepreneurs, I need not tell you this. At times, there's no difference between your job, what you're trying to do or what you're doing, and your personal life. at this stage. It's almost always like that. And the next thing is beyond dreaming or beyond the foresight, beyond the purpose, beyond the hard work, is to think long term. So we thought long term. We were thinking what will happen in 10 years, in 20 years. When we started, we did not define success in the short term. We defined success in the long term. To us, success was helping to democratize banking, helping to create financial access to people, a continent that didn't have huge or impressive financial access. So that long term continues to guide even what I do to date. And I believe for most successful business people, short-termism does not really help so much. So my word to you today is in everything you do, let's think beyond the immediate and think long-term. But as you think long-term, it's good to have quick wins or milestones, because the milestones keep you on focus. The milestones help you to understand whether or not you're on track. So it's good to have milestones within that long-term horizon that you're looking at. And next one is impact. So beyond the milestone, the long-term perspective, you need to ask yourself, and I guess for social entrepreneurs, you understand this better than I do. What impact do I want to create here? Impact defined the way you like. So for us, when we started, the impact was, first, we wanted to democratize banking because having banking account was like a status symbol. And we needed to make this in a country then of today 171 million people, then we were about 120 million people. People who owned bank accounts were less than 5 million. We saw opportunity here, but we thought, we saw opportunity here, but we also saw it as a good cause to pursue, to help democratize banking. And it's on record that in some countries, when we decided to expand, we opened bank accounts with zero account balances because we wanted to create access. We wanted people to have access to bank accounts. We wanted to change lifestyle to a large extent. And the second impact, they're all related, is in Africa at the time, in my country, Nigeria at the time, if your child, Paul, was schooling in a particular state, you would have to physically go there to give Paul money, or Paul would have to come to you. So we needed to improve the payment system. We wanted to create ubiquity. We wanted people to have access to banking, to payments, without necessarily have to live in their offices. We deployed technology to achieve this. So for us, the impact we wanted to achieve was so important to us, and we realized that this impact, if we achieve it, it will help us. We will make more money, but would have touched society in very significant ways. Today, this bank has, as I said before, operations in more than 19 African countries, and we have customers at excess of 8 million. Nigeria alone at the time had bank customers that was less than 5 million. So to you, entrepreneurs, I'd like to commend and advise or propose or suggest what personally I have experienced in my previous life as a banker. But it didn't end there. This previous life has significantly influenced what I do today. I believe in a concept that I shared with Jeff not too long ago, a concept of Afro-capitalism. Afro-capitalism is a call on the private sector in Africa to invest long-term, to play a key role in helping to develop the continent. For a long time, we've called on government, or everyone blames government for lack of development on the continent. But we, the private sector, also have a role to play. So Afro-capitalism is a call on the private sector to be involved in helping to develop the continent through what we know how to do as private sector people, that is investing. through investment in long-term investments, again, bringing that long-term perspective that we had at the time, long-term investment in key sectors that can help to create both economic prosperity and social wealth. That is what I preach, and that is one of the reasons I'm here. I believe that the future of this world, to a large extent, is in the hands of the private sector. And the private sector is driven largely by entrepreneurs, yourselves, people who are in this room. 2 days ago, I was at the United Nations to talk further, discuss about the role of the private sector in the post-2015 MDG. I shared with the audience what I think the private sector should be doing and how private sector should engage with the public sector, the NGOs, to create a better society. It is true that people used to say that private sector is driven by other motives. But indeed, we see a convergence between what is good for private sector and what is good for everyone, for mankind. And so for yourselves as entrepreneurs, this belief in the ability of the private sector to help change the world is one you should own. It's one you should work towards. It's one we should, in every activity, every action of ours, we must demonstrate that in private sector, we're driven by values, and that today's private sector believes that you do not have to do well before you do good, that you can do well and do good simultaneously. I believe in this, and I have dedicated the second phase of my life to making sure that we create, my colleagues and I at the Tony Elumelu Foundation, that we continue to work to create more Tony Elumelus, more entrepreneurs out of Africa, and that we give all the support they need to succeed, and that we make sure that they can compete with entrepreneurs from other parts of the world. We'd like to see this kind of event held in Africa with young entrepreneurs all over the place trying to conquer the world and to connect hands with yourselves. Soon, we shall be launching a certain initiative in this space of entrepreneurship to enable aspiring African entrepreneurs realize and fulfill their passion for success in this field. I'd like to end here, but to wish all of you greater successes and self-inspiration, not from me, self-inspiration, realizing that what we do in our respective lines of endeavors can help make the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage news anchor and editor-at-large for Bloomberg Television, Francine Lacqua.
That was great. Well done. What a pleasure to share the stage with Mr. Elumelu. Thank you so much. It was a very inspiring speech. And I think my first question, you believe private sector is the way forward, right? That means we need more entrepreneurs. Was there ever a moment in your life where you thought, this is hard, it's hard being an entrepreneur, I don't have the support, or it's difficult getting funds? And how did you personally overcome that difficult moment?
Can you hear me? Okay. for the journey to entrepreneurship is not a linear journey. It's not always moving in the same direction. You have the tough times. In our organization, the name of our organization is called Heirs Holdings. Heirs is an acronym for our core values, and the R in our Heirs acronym is resilience. Resilience is key in business. And I've had series. What you see at the end of the day for successful business people is this end point, end product, the success. But before you got there, a lot, you know. But so there's not enough time to share all the failures or the personal experiences that didn't go well. But all I want to say is you do and you would encounter difficulties in your journey. That is why it should be a long-term journey. And that is why we embrace resilience as one of our core values. When you face those difficult moments, those moments when you cannot sleep at night, thinking, some it could be how to pay the next salary, some it could be how to pay certain bills that you need settled to be able to move to the next stage. Remember what I'm saying today. There's R in Heirs. There's R that you must embrace, and that R is resilience.
Resilience is probably one of the most difficult things to of course, embrace and overcome. Is there anything that you can also do or that we as society should do as a step before that to make sure that people start being entrepreneurs and then test their resilience?
No, it's true. So when I founded the Tony Elumelu Foundation in 2010, one of the things we decided to do is, it's like the concept of the basis and the superstructure. Before entrepreneurs will succeed, you need to create the enabling environment for entrepreneurs to succeed. That is why statistically, there are some regions of the world that are prone to producing more entrepreneurs than other regions because the enabling environment is predisposes or helps people to succeed. In Africa, where I come from, it's good, work, live, born, and everything in Africa is even more challenging. And so if I speak, you understand more. Because if you succeed in Africa, you can succeed everywhere or anywhere else. What we did was to create what we call we worked with the government to create the National Competitiveness Council of Nigeria, because we realized that first things first, you must create the right environment if businesses must succeed. And businesses, there are a lot of challenges in succeeding, especially in that part of the world. But what is important is not just that problems exist. Problems that exist could actually become a competitive advantage if you know how to deal with those problems. So don't give up, resilience, and let us, Jeff, myself, and other people who are endowed, we should, if we are truly committed to helping create entrepreneurs, we should all be involved in helping to create the right environment that will make entrepreneurs to succeed. Because if we don't create the right environment for entrepreneurs to succeed, it will be very difficult for them to succeed.
It's very true. I was going to ask you about the other acronyms. You have R for resilience.
Yes. So
which one are the other ones?
The first, H-E-I-R. H is hard work, which I shared with you. E is emotional intelligence. In today's world, we have seen that social intelligence, emotional intelligence is good for success, both intra and inter relationships. The other one is integrity, I. It's very important to display transparency, integrity. You know, you make promise, you deliver on promise, especially if you're dealing with customers and co. Then the R is resilience, and S is synergies. You know, you must operate synergistically, especially if you're running more than one business. So that is actually the name of our organization, Heirs Holdings. The Heirs is what I just described, the acronym.
And so the resilience, does it also include failure? Because when we speak to a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs, it's the ones that actually said, I failed, but I got up, and it was a badge of honor to fail, because that taught me maybe more than when I always succeeded.
You know, I think most businesses, you always have failure, difficult moments. That's when I say difficult challenges moments, either failed business and you start a new one, or failed initiatives. You might say, you know, I want to do this in this way. And it could be a competitive strategy, it could be a tactical strategy, but the important thing is, I want to do this, and you fail in that area, you learn from that, and you fail in that area. I tell you one instance. When we were expanding, because at some point in 2005, we decided to turn the bank into a Pan-African bank to be able to fulfill the impact mission that we had at the time. And so my philosophy was the market is huge, it's there. We're driven by this purpose to democratize and this and that. Let's run very fast and let's recruit this and that. But I found out that we had culture issues because we're growing so fast, culture issues. So what I did was to create a UB Academy, and now we recruit to bring people to the training school. We train them like 3 months and try to adapt in terms of culture, make sure that we blended the culture as much as possible. Because after a certain age, it's more difficult to change culture. It's easier when you start a new business, you grow with people, and they'll get to the top together. That you have culture that is cohesive. But when you get different people to support the growth of the institution at some stage, you have different cultures. So that was a major issue. I talk about it, people might think, is that a challenge? But it was a challenge, because if I had the wrong culture in an organization, it can actually destroy the spirit of an organization. So culture was one of the challenges we had. Now, how did I deal with that subsequently? I told you what I did. And we slowed down also growth at some point so that we don't grow too fast, that we'll not be able to integrate the cultures. So those are some of the challenges. But you do have challenges in business, a lot.
Therefore, the creative thinking is essential. Mr. Elumelu, thank you so much. Running out of time, so I want to invite the young leaders actually to come on stage for a fascinating conversation. We have 3 of the Skoll and MasterCard Foundation young leaders brought here from around the world. If you'd like to make your way on stage, if I can actually spot them, there they are. And they were actually chosen. So they were chosen for their leadership and abilities to actually change the lives of the most vulnerable. So I spent a bit of time with them backstage, and I have to say they really impressed me. I'm going to start with Marcel, so I'll just have a quick introduction. Marcel Fukayama, the CEO of CDI Center for Digital Inclusion, age 29, from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Now, he believes that technology is a powerful resource that can be used to alleviate poverty and empower people to rebuild communities and make the world a better place. Marcel co-founded CDI Social Enterprise, which transforms lives of low-income citizens through a network of community centers that have mentored over 1.5 million people by focusing on 3 key skill areas: soft skills, problem solving, and IT. He's also a leader of the B Corporation in South America. So that's Marcel. Ghislain, Morard, so he's Country Program Director of Indonesia for Friends International, age 29, French, but has lived in Asia for the last 7 years, supporting vulnerable youth to access employment. Now, Ghislain was tasked with the opening of Friends International in Jakarta a year ago. He runs, manages, implements projects, supporting unemployed young people and caretakers to access better economic opportunities to build their future, but also that of their children. A lot of the work also includes protecting young children to keep them off the streets and integrating them back in public education while making sure that their families also protect these young children. And then Aime Noela Akayezu. Noela is the Enterprise Program Support Officer for the Digital Opportunity Trust, age 25, from Rwanda. Noela has a real passion for empowerment. DOT, so this Digital Opportunity Trust, finds, engages, and trains unemployed university graduates that then go into local communities to inspire and train the most vulnerable youth from 16 to 24. These mentors, 30,000 in all, so this is not, they've actually trained 30,000 mentors in just 3 years, use a peer-to-peer approach to train and inspire through a variety of soft skills and technical skills that include business assessment of local market opportunities, job fairs, and links them with possible credit providers. Now, I was really impressed with all 3 of them because they were trying to achieve a similar object, but also went about it in very different ways. Marcel, I know you have questions for Tony Elumelu, so we'll get to that in a second, but I just want to ask, being here, what has been the best thing you've learned about how either you can improve what you're doing back home, change it, adapt it, or have you met people that have had really similar difficulties than you have?
Thanks, Francine. Thanks, Mr. Elumelu. It's been a great week. It's been a very inspiring week, and being here with a world-class global community of social entrepreneurs has been really inspiring to me as a social entrepreneur as well. So there are so many challenges, there are so many dilemmas that we go through on a daily basis, right? So being here, sharing, learning, connecting, has been really inspiring, insightful. Being here at the Skoll World Forum, and especially here at this panel, is a dream come true to me as a social entrepreneur. And you know, here is the most thoughtful forum for social entrepreneurs. So, you know, we've been going through at CDI, you know, CDI is one of the first Skoll awardees, and we've been going through a major shift in the organization, and there are some dilemmas that I could share with other social entrepreneurs that are going through the same situation in terms of reinvention, in terms of how to go to the next level, how to thinking of the next 20 years, and that's how it's been very inspiring. Thank you.
So what's your first question, Marcel?
Well, as a tech guy or tech social entrepreneur from a tech organization, Mr. Elumelu, I'm very inspired by technology, and we've seen the past years that technology has empowered people a lot, especially in the past years to active citizenship, mainly in Brazil, where I'm coming from. We could saw the manifestation protests last year. In your vision, how technology could support Africa to overcome some challenges, including the fragile political democratic system?
You know, first is, Marcel, I'd like to congratulate you for what you've achieved, and to urge you on, and say that the world is your operating theater, not just Brazil. We need what you're doing. In Africa, just 2 days back in New York, I was discussing with a lady who was involved in the innovation, certain innovation that came out of East Africa, Kenya, I think Ushahidi, something about how to manage, conduct elections and make sure that you empower citizens to defend the votes. And I was telling her, I said, when are you going to do this in other African countries? Because we need this across the continent. You know, what you're doing here about entrepreneurship, what we're all doing, actually, not just you, about entrepreneurship, you have to have, as I discussed, I mentioned not long ago, the enabling environment. And the enabling environment is provided largely not by the private sector, but by government. So it is important that we all show interest in how governance evolves, how it emerges, how people make sure that the people we want to rule or lead us are actually the people who are leading us. And I think that technology is very crucial in playing this kind of role. So for Africa, we need it, but then it takes me to a passion that I have, and that is the issue of access to electricity. You know, we need to access to electricity, energy, to make sure that technology, because most countries will tell that the reason that they don't have breakthrough technological innovations for elections and selection and society, civil mobilization is because of electricity issue. So we do have some challenges, but if we can have a technological device or system that would operate irrespective of electricity, that would be very nice, so that all the areas in the world, so maybe this is an idea that social entrepreneurs should take further. But we need to see how to make it work. There's room for technology a role for technology to play in helping advance good governance and making sure that with the instrument of good governance that people do the right thing. We can actually empower the society through technology.
Thank you. Noela, I was fascinated by your story because you do basically peer-to-peer. So it's putting people in the community that can help directly, that live with the community, and these are undergraduates that are not employed. And this is going back to the environment, right? Creating the right environment for people to learn skills. Has anything that Mr. Elumelu said resonated with you? And what's your question to him?
What I ran through his speech was mostly the element that led to his success. So I think that is something that can build upon on and try to apply it on my country as well, as we are facing special issues due to our history, and we are trying, the peer-to-peer methodology is the best that is working, as young people are those who know the issues that the other young people, their peers, are facing. They know better their community, and it is best to use them to build the community. So my question comes on one of the elements you talked about, trying to see beyond today and actualize it. So I kind of have an issue of in my community, or some young people, their dream is just to have a meal on their table. As we are in a poor country, just having a meal, having something to put in their stomach is the dream, the big dream they can achieve. So I'm wondering how you could advise us. How can we approach? How can we get them to have bigger dreams and try to build on them to build our community?
This is a very interesting question, by Noela. But I think maybe let's put it this way. Again, this doctrine of first things first. So to those people, so if you're not eating, what's more important is I want to be able to eat, and so how do we inspire people like this? How do we get people like to look at the bigger picture? I think that, again, is one area that most of us, especially in Africa, who have operated in Africa and have attained a certain level of comfort, economic comfort in Africa, need to come up and do something about. We need to mentor people. We need to share our own stories. We need to let people know that the Tony Elumelu you see today were not born like that. That we all suffered, brought up from very difficult environments and faced our own challenges, but we kept the hope alive. We saw beyond today, and we saw a future that someday we thought would come true, and that encouraged us. But it takes also political leadership to help to create the environment. We need to encourage people to go to school. We need to encourage people to go to school. We need to encourage parents to send children to school. We need to make sure that the kind of, lack of access to jobs is a major factor, a major challenge in Africa. The reason those kids will be thinking of only meals is because maybe their parents are not economically active. They are not engaged. They don't have jobs. So a starting point for us would be to see how all of us, both in Africa and outside of Africa, I shared with them United Nations 2 days back on Wednesday that the world cannot fold its hand and see Africa with the challenge of unemployment we have continue in that manner. So we need to make sure that economic hope is created. People go into terrorism, people think short-term like you described because of lack of economic hope. If they see that they can go to school, things can improve, if they see if their parents get access to good employment, their parents will be able to feed them, encourage them to take them to school, and they'll begin to see new leads of life. So, answer to your difficult question, first is political leadership should create the right environment. 2 is the private sector. We should try to help improve access to gainful employment on the continent. 3 is we need to do role modeling, mentoring, role modeling for people to hear our stories and know that they too can become bigger than we are today, so that hope they will have hope. So I think if we do a combination of all of this, we'll be able to encourage people to think beyond where's my next meal going to come from.
And Ghislain, this is one of the things that exactly your foundation does, is basically economic hope, right? What is the one challenge or the question that you get asked the most about with people that need to be inspired to have that economic hope to maybe either think differently or train in different skills?
Right. We work with young people who are very marginalized. A lot of them have been living on the streets, working on the streets for a very long time. And people always wonder how we can support them to move on from that, to build the hope that they need. And you mentioned resilience as an essential quality of entrepreneurs, and we find that these young people are actually among the most resilient you could meet. And they've also been making their way to live on the streets, to make a living. They've been very creative, they gain business skills. They actually have a lot of the qualities that you would expect from an entrepreneur. Yet when it comes to actually supporting them to start a more formal, a more stable business that could support them, support their family, very often because they've been stigmatized, they don't acknowledge the skills that they have. And as you mentioned, Francine, it's about hope. It's about self-esteem. They don't see themselves as the entrepreneurs that they really are. I suppose with your foundation, you deal with the same type of issues and the same type of young people. Do you have any advice on how to inspire young people and give them the confidence that they need to become entrepreneurs?
Well, let me share with you some of what we do. So let's say we have people who are leaving school, who are graduating from schools. So we try to take some of them, and we'll call them the Tony Elumelu Fellows, and we create networking platforms for them. We invite them to events like this. We mentor them. We give them financial support. We also invest in businesses, good businesses that they have, that we think can create maximum impact. Let me say that you watched the presentation before I came on stage about Planet Lab. We invested in Planet Lab. It's our part of a way we also contribute to supporting entrepreneurs who have great ideas. I would say that economic hope is very important. It's the reason people wake up in the morning and want to do things, because you believe that tomorrow will be better than today. And all of us have a role to play to make sure that we continue to instill, encourage, and give hope to people economically. And so that means people need to know that if they go to school or go to vocational centers, at the end of the day, they'll be gainfully, they'll be employed, they'll be engaged. If people have that hope, then they don't mind spending 10 years going to school, because they know at the end of the day, life will be better for them. But it is a lack of hope that creates problems for mankind. And to me, that's one of the greatest threats that we all face as mankind in the 21st century. We need to see how collectively we can empower people by giving them economic hope that is realistic. If people see their neighbor succeed, they will want to succeed. But if all you see around you is hopelessness, then there's no reason to live.
We have another question from Marcel, but Tony, I have a question because do we need to change our language a little bit? We talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about disruptors, but actually, as Ghislain was pointing to, there are people that maybe live on the streets, but that sell things, that are natural-born entrepreneurs, and yet are scared of seeing themselves an entrepreneur and therefore found a company. Do we need to talk differently, maybe, and call them something else?
So at our foundation, we were using a certain terminology. We used to say that we try to catalyze. So after a while, we said, maybe this big grammar. Let's break it down and leave this. So economic hope, economic empowerment. Somebody has business, SMEs, entrepreneurship, in my viewpoint, is one and the same. The key thing is that people should be engaged productively. People should be productively engaged. Either engaged, you can be engaged just to support your family alone. You can be engaged to support the community. You can be engaged. You can help hire one person. You can just hire only yourself. But the important thing is there should be one form of economic activity or the other. People should not wake up and not have what to do. That is what creates unrest for society. That's what we should move against. And I agree that at times maybe entrepreneurship is too much a word. Then if entrepreneurship is too big, then what is social entrepreneurship? The important thing is for us to be sure that we are productive. And to be sure that we are productive, yes.
Yeah, engaged is a great word. Marcel, your question.
Mr. Elumelu, when you see your investments on Planet Labs, it's an indicator about some trends globally. And you are one of the creators of one of the most disruptive model for mobile banking in Africa. and you are quite experienced in that. So in your vision, your ambitions for disruptive technologies and trends, what is your, in your vision, what are the next global trends? I know that Planet Labs could be one of them, but what else?
So it's asking me, what is the next big thing to happen in the world? I wish I knew. But for me, the way I try to envision, the way need or innovation or creativity comes from need, at times, So just like what I said before, when we started, it was banking, but I felt you need to understand what's happening around you. So what are the needs? There are a lot of needs today in the world, and so it's a question of having a structured approach to thinking it through and say, okay, what can be the next big thing? But for me in Africa at this point in time, I would say that we need to improve access to electricity to help change the face of the continent. So any form of any innovation that can help to increase access to electricity in Africa will do very well. 2 is the issue of the elections, or how to engage the civil society, how to engage the masses in how governance is shaped, how leaders emerge is very important. We're beginning to see a correlation between good governance, good governance and economic development. And so whatever we can do by way of innovation to enhance the mechanism and the process that produces our leadership, it will be wonderful. You'll not only be making money, but you'll actually be helping a continent, because we need to figure out how to ensure that our wishes are actually reflected in how we are governed.
Noela.
Yeah. I would like to learn a little bit more about your experience. When you started, what was your biggest fear?
I think when I started, maybe beyond even issue of fear, it's just general challenge. So for me, when we started, we were quite, we had good knowledge in terms of product, knowledge of what we wanted to do. We are quite clear what we want to achieve. But you see, it's not what you alone, what you think or what you want to achieve. People actually have to buy into it and support it. If they don't, you don't make progress. So the greatest challenge we had at the time, personally, I became CEO of a bank at a very young age, at the age of 34. And it was largely unheard of at the time. First, when I was a brand manager, I was 26 years old. And so your brand managers were people who of a certain gray hair and co. And so it was difficult getting society to accept this. And so I know there was a time they used to call us cowboy bankers. Don't have those cowboys. Those. In fact, I remember someone told me they saw my picture in the papers and that I had a low cut. All these people, one haircut, when you have a low haircut, look at them looking like cowboys. So I had that challenge. I know banking is a trust game. It's a trust business, and if people call you cowboys or call the team cowboys, then you're dead on arrival. So what we did was we were mindful of this, because I say to people, a problem identified is a problem half solved. You need to know, have feedback. So we knew how people felt, and we changed. That's why we decided, whether people call us cowboys or not, if you want to transfer money to your child who is 100 miles away, you would rather go to a bank that will help you do that than physically move that money, because there are a lot of risks associated with that. So we use technology. We deploy technology for online real-time banking, and we had wide network in terms of coverage, and so people came to us. And over time, people started realizing that these are not cowboys. So the first problem was that acceptability. It was very tough. And 2 also is like the issue of hope. So you're used to a country, a society where to become like a bank CEO or a top person in banking, you needed to be son of Jeff, Jeff Skoll. You needed to be Jeff Skoll's son. And suddenly you want Tony. Tony who? Who? So you had to deal with that to create confidence. But today it's all a thing of the past. So the message, actually, entrepreneurs is, depending on your line of business, you will face certain teething, very bright question, you will face certain teething problems But let this not deter you. Be quite resilient, stay focused, think long term, and as you encounter these challenges and difficulties day by day, just say to yourself, it's a matter of time. Tony shared this experience with us. If Tony overcome, I will overcome. That is the way to go about it.
We're doing a number of the things that you try to do with your foundation in Southeast Asia, right? Also trying to encourage young people to find markets for their businesses and to start businesses. And we see a lot of programs that are trying to achieve that in Southeast Asia. And what we find that a lot of them use materials and curriculum that maybe are not culturally relevant because they come directly from other countries where they've been created and tested, and they're being imported to Southeast Asia and being used and not always adapted to the culture, and therefore don't always work. I was wondering if that's also something that you've experienced in Africa, and whether you see a need for a specific African culture of entrepreneurship to be developed and supported.
No, I think entrepreneurship, my viewpoint, is the same, universal. However, there are peculiarities in how you succeed. As I said before, you have some areas are more predisposed by way of the enabling nature of the societies and environment to succeed than some other areas. So if you are in Africa, for instance, doing business in Africa, it's different from doing business here. Here you have electricity, for instance, access to electricity is given. In Africa, you have to improvise for electricity. So it could make the journey more difficult for you, but basically it's all about the same principles of entrepreneurship. One makes you more rugged than the other. There are a lot of institutional challenges that you have more maybe in Africa, India, some areas of the world than in some other areas. But what that does is it toughens you, and that is why the Tony Elumelu Foundation is quite committed to not only developing entrepreneurs, but making sure that the enabling environment in Africa is improved upon so that people like yourselves on the continent who want to excel, who want to do well as entrepreneurs, have the opportunity and the environment to do well. So I think we should create a better society working together. We need more Jeffs doing great things like this. Jeff, this is very good.
Tony, thank you so much. We're running out of time, but I'm just going to ask you a very short question.
Sure.
How different is it being a CEO of a profit organization, and how difficult and different it is for a foundation? Because actually, if you leave profits to one side, you still want results for both.
For me, what I have come to realize through what we did in the private sector, or what I did for profit, which is captured in this concept of Afri-capitalism, which is private sector invest long-term in key sectors that help drive growth and development while making economic profit and social wealth. So the question of trying to do both simultaneously. No longer make money first, and after you've made money, then start doing good. We can. I guess that's what all of you are doing here. When our group invested in a power plant in Nigeria, we committed to the President Obama's $2.5 billion, to President Obama's Power Africa initiative, and we committed $2.5 billion to it. A starting point for us to invest, acquire a power plant. When we acquired a power plant, we wanted to make money, but more importantly, we wanted to help deal with the issue I've been talking about here. Access to electricity is very, very important. So the way we see things these days is the line between doing good and doing well. We think one does not have to follow the other. We can do both actually simultaneously. In fact, at times in the country, people wonder if Tony Elumelu Foundation is Heirs Foundation, because they say we do certain things. We encourage entrepreneurship through the foundation. We do impact investment, like what the Planet Lab talked about. We support not necessarily for profit motive. Profit should come for sustainability, but to do good, to make sure we help society, we help mankind. And we help ourselves in the process also, because what is good for Mr. A is good for Mr. B, so it's good for everyone. So the experience, is it different? To a large extent, not. because in profit, you're driven by dollar and cent. For non-profit, if you're focused on making a change, transformation to the world, bring transformation to the world, you say we want to create, for instance, 10,000 entrepreneurs. That's a goal. So the way you pursue the $1 billion goal, you're also pursuing this goal that you want to create 10,000 entrepreneurs. That is what we do. That's what I also encourage for others to do.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Good guys. Thank you. Thank you. Good question.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Entrepreneurship may be too long a word, but it isn't too long an ambition. And thank you, young leaders, Noela, Marcel, and Ghislain. And thank you, Francine. And for those of you who are wondering, Francine's baby is due in about 5 weeks. And now, we thought you might like to see your deepest desires. Ben Rees is the originator of viral sensation, 50 people, 1 question. We think you might like what he's done.
In the past 6 years, I've asked over 10,000 people 1 question at a time. This journey has taken me all over the world, from Syrian refugee camps to remote islands in the Coral Seas. But it all started in New Orleans with 1 simple question. What would you wish to happen by the end of the day? At first glance, these questions seem simple, only scratching at the surface. But surprisingly, we found a glimpse, insight into an ever-present search for the meaning of our existence. For some, these questions are a great sense of anxiety or burden. For others, they're a misguided trap, a meaningless misdirection of purpose. But is this question why that we can't seem to get out of our heads? So we keep asking, why does your voice matter? Does your work really mean something? Are you serving yourself? Are you truly serving others? What is your 1 reason for existing? So go ahead, ask yourself.
Very good. What is the question?
Excellent. My name is Mphatso Kajule. I'm from Malawi.
I don't know what the question is, but I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I hate cameras. Why did I say yes?
My name is Jorge Gonzalez Nakasawa. I'm from Mexico.
Can I get some prep on what the question is?
My name is Marcel Fukayama. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil.
Julia Lala Maharaj, and I'm from London.
My name is Tasca Jaunawa. I'm from the Brazil Amazon rainforest.
My name is Jude O'Reilly, and I'm from Seattle, Washington.
Cindy Lin, I'm from China, Shanghai.
My name is Sabri Saidam. I'm Palestinian. Shall I look your way? Yeah, okay.
What's the question?
Oh my God. I have no idea what you guys are going to ask me.
Get ready.
Oh, Nan, you don't want a flippant answer, do you?
What, is that 1 word? You wouldn't say 1 word.
My purpose in life is
To be disruptive.
Toilets.
My purpose in life is to have a smile on my face more often than a frown. Yeah, don't frown.
My purpose is to make the world beautiful.
To be a good dad, to be honest.
Actually, my name means source of joy.
Well, of course, the immediate thought that comes to mind is to do good in the world.
That I like lighting sparks in complex and dark places.
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Wow.
I'm thinking it's time I have to measure about how much I've changed the world and how much more I need to push.
When I was 23, I had the most impactful moment in my entire life. I was diagnosed with cancer.
I was walking down a street in San Francisco, and an underground electrical transformer blew up and blew me up in the process.
And you see that human body go from 6 feet to 6 inches of dust in your hand. You recognize the purpose on life is a lot more than what seems obvious.
Yeah, I've doubted sometimes whether I could impact such a huge transformation that's required.
I always question myself, not about being the better in the world, but being the better for the world, and always bringing hope.
Well, living in a land of conflict puts one into a feeling that one should question his being and what good is he doing to humanity.
Whatever I'm doing is the kind of thing I'm supposed to do.
Why am I existing?
Why am I here in life?
Do I have a purpose? Do I have a meaning?
All of this effort was not going to change the world in any way, and I had to fix that.
What I knew was when I came out of all this, I wanted to do something with my life that made a real difference.
You've got to overcome it, you've got to transcend it, and you've got to move toward that future of the big change we're all working for.
Every time I sit with communities and listen to people who are making this change themselves, it inspires me all over again.
Try to make a difference in the biggest issues in the world.
To help those children to go to school and live a happy life.
I wanted to feel that my life was a life worth living and that any energy and talent I had was in service of others.
We must live as if this is our last day on earth or last minute on earth. It really gives us focus. So I'm blessed to be here.
And I think the thing that's sustained me is I don't have to do it alone. I'm not doing it alone. I'm just part of a great chain of being that's about healing the planet and our relationship to it.
Great. Have a great day. That's it? That's it? I know, right?
Good enough? Thanks so much. Okay. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you.
I have one question. Was that great? My purpose in life is to hear your words and your unspoken thoughts and even your deepest desires. I will fail to do you justice, but I will try nonetheless to capture this year's forum for you in numbers and in words. I hope you recognize yourselves. The numbers start big and get small. She influences $10 trillion of investment capital around the risks and opportunities of climate change. 2.5 billion people are unbanked. 1 billion people live in slums. 100,000 people move into slums every day. We are beginning to see a correlation between good governance and economic development. The world's urban population grows by 10 people every 5 seconds. There is 1 doctor for 250,000 people in Malawi. Every 2 seconds, a girl child is married. There are 61 million children not in school. Rima said, "I'm here so I don't forget what I've already learned." 4,000 children die every day from contaminated water. There are 300 million slum dwellers without access to clean water. Leadership is too confusing to do by yourself. People are out to help you. The road is made by walking. My daughters can marry who they want and be who they want. I am determined to make this a reality for every girl in the world. Coming to the forum for the first time is coming home. We are all Malala. We are one. One love. And I leave you this year with words of the philosopher Ronald Dworkin, who was nearly writing about ambition when he wrote, "We play with fire and take the consequences, because the alternative is cowardice in the face of the unknown." You play with fire, and I love you for it. Travel safely. See you next year.